Hello and welcome to this product domain session as part of the buildingSMART International Standards Summit Buildingstyle 2023. Thank you for joining. My name is Jeffrey Olet and I will be your moderator today. This session is titled Guidance for Manufacturers on How to Prepare, Publish, and Manage Product Data. Our speaker is Petr Vokoun from the Product Domain Steering Committee. This session is scheduled to last 90 minutes, including time for questions at the end. The session is being recorded and will be made available in the replay section of the event as soon as possible. Before I hand it over to the speaker, I would like to remind you that this is a hybrid event. For online attendees, your microphones will remain muted for the duration of the session. If you wish to make a comment or ask a question, please use the chat box in the control panel. For the attendees here in the room, please keep the background noise to a minimum. And if you wish to make a comment or ask a question, please raise your hand. We do have a traveling mic and people can ask. So I would like to bring to your attention that buildingSMART is committed to ensuring the participation and development of standards is unrestricted, and the process for their adoption is transparent, and standards that are developed do not favor any particular provider and are open, non-binding, accessible to all. So please take note of our code of conduct. You can see the link here on the slide and with the QR code. It is found on the buildingSMART.com website. So now I'd like to hand it over to Petr and let me get his presentation up.
Thank you, Jeff. So, hello everyone. My name is Petr and I'm focusing in the BIM area on product specification. I'm a member of Product Room, and the reason why we are here today is because on the last summit, we've been introducing our group and our work in product domain. And what we have found is that even the largest manufacturers are sometimes confused what to do regarding digitization. They are sometimes afraid to start with something because it could be costly and they have to allocate a lot of resources. So after this experience, we were also we are having discussions. What about the medium-sized manufacturers and small manufacturers? How do they start? And does it or is BIM too abstract for them, or was their role in the process? Yeah, it's only 6 slides, so maybe we can move it manually. Yeah. Okay, that would be great. Thank you. So what we did in our group is first version of a document that is called Guidelines for Manufacturers. That should explain. So that should explain what is needed to be done from their side. So the basic idea is that every manufacturer should have their own data in-house and be able to share it. You shouldn't, as a manufacturer, rely on like other databases that are external and filling everything in on several places is the most effective way, and it's basically up to you which data you will want to share where. It's similar to sharing your data to your website. It's in your database, and some of the data you want to share publicly, some of it not. Yeah, we could go next time. Next slide. Yeah, thank you. So I would like to go through the document structure. It will be, I suppose, released publicly in the maybe, I don't know if it today. We will discuss it further based on the feedback, and it's still in work in progress. We use terms like planners. That is a reference to all the possible users of the data, so it will simplify things. And then on the other side, manufacturers, which are the producers of the products. As I said, it's work in progress. So sometimes in the document there is like the captions are wrong and so on, but the idea should be visible now. What we are trying to is to be practical and to share our knowledge from the like the common practices and our experience what we have. and to give a couple of examples, but most of all to get your feedback if it's worth to dive in more into this topic. So please try to comment or get back to us whenever you want, and let's discuss these topics. So the introduction and the document purpose I just explained. We can go to the next slide. So third chapter is about providing data to planners. So the idea is to start from what we want to achieve actually. So the planners usually, or they're like common practice of what they expect to get from manufacturers. These could be a printed or digitized catalogs, so where they can find the right product. And obviously it includes some of the data, but this is something that cannot be used in the BIM process, because every planner would have to retype every information. Then there are PDF documents like technical sheets or declarations of performance and so on. Is the same issue. So they are usually there. You can find them, but if you want them to use them in the BIM process, it's complicated. And the most common way are BIM objects, which are standalone files, which are usually provided through some portals or on the manufacturer's website. So this is what the planners expect. And sometimes manufacturers have also BIM plugins. That's a direct connection to the design software, when they can search for the product and put it inside the project. I would say this is the most effective way how to handle data, because you can basically rely that it's up to date. It can have enhanced functions or features, and it can also create BIM objects and so on. So it's just explanation what you as a manufacturer could be asked for, and what you should basically be able to deliver. And your goal is to get there, basically. So we can go next slide. Thank you. So what information should be in the BIM objects and BIM plugins and technical sheets and so on? We just had a presentation about the CPR, the European Commission regulations, where manufacturers will be able soon, probably, to upload their product data. But this will be mandatory thing, so it won't probably be all the data that are there. It will be just a list of required properties. So every user or the planner would be basically able to ask for a different set of data. So first of all, maybe you heard about product information management. That is management of the information. This is a system you can develop or you can buy, and where it's stored. And it doesn't matter if you buy it as a service or if you develop it in-house, which is obviously much more work. But this is something you have to, or you should have 100% control of. So that's where your data are stored. And the reason why we don't suggest using external platforms where you will be filling in the data is that there will be several places where you should share the data. So you could decide where to send it, and you will be asked to keep it up to date. So that's actually the aim of the digitization, that nobody would have to care if the data is up to date or not, and in a few years everybody will take it as granted. So this is where we are heading, and where BIM should help. Then there is a chapter about database structure. That means we put, for example, part of like example from ISO 23386, where there's a description what is a property, what is the attribute, and basically what is a parameter and feature and so on. So this is something that may be confusing a little bit, but there are several standards that make it very much clear. So again, the database structure of your products could be any. It's up to you how you create it. Even if you have your own PIM system, you have to think about how to do this based on your product types and so on. And it's a huge difference between how the product is specified in BIM software and how the product in your database looks like. So for example, if you are a producer of gypsum boards, it is very unlikely that you will see your gypsum board somewhere as an object in the BIM model. So it will be specified, for example, as a layer of a structure, or maybe just as a information in the wall. The point is, you should make your database structure as flexible for you as possible, and then find out how to share the data and the structure that is needed from you. Then there is a question, what is a product actually? So we put there, at the moment, very short definition, it is what you sell. It doesn't matter how it's specified, but it's something you can hire about. It's something you can put out of shelf and sell to someone. So we'll be definitely discussing this topic further. But at the moment, this is the cornerstone of your database, and you should build from that. Then there is a question what information you should be able to provide. So there is geometry properties, there is the product properties, there are the resource files. That is basically the documents. I've been talking about the PDF technical sheets and maybe images of the products and so on. But there's also explanation that there are product types like assemblies. That means products made of other products, and it's sometimes necessary to deal with this too. Again, not related how it's specified in the BIM model. And also some of the products need to be defined as calculations of like formulas. That means for example, if you have something that's very much configurable and it's made upon request, for example, it could be glazing on a facade, it's every time different, then there could be also calculations instead of the product definition. So it's basically the product definition then. What you shouldn't forget is thinking about discontinued products. So my opinion is that the product should never be deleted from the database. It should be marked as discontinued. And there is a difference if you are updating an existing product or making it discontinued, or you are making a like typo correction. So differences between product update itself and information update. So these are things that should be noted in the log and also distributed correctly to the user. And there's also related products. So if you discontinue a product, then it's very easy to say what product should be used instead of that. So it's very easy to sell it. Also, you have to keep in mind that there could be a facility manager who already has the as-built model. There is a specification, and the fact that you don't manufacture the product anymore doesn't mean that you could just delete it like it never existed. It existed. There should be timestamps from where it was on the market, when it was on the market, but in the end, it should be able to find it in the future. All right, we can go to the next one. If you manage to create the database and the structure and fill it in with some information, then the crucial part is sharing it. So basically, what to share is a subset of information. So that would be part of the database. Not everything. You won't be sharing all the information to everyone. So for example, if there is e-shop selling your products, they will be interested maybe in the weight and in the cost of course. But if there is a planner, he'll be interested in thermal and acoustic properties, for example, and so on. So it's not like you will be exposing your database to everyone, but you need to learn how to take a subset of the information and share it to somewhere. For that, we use different structures. For human readable, like Excel files, there are also like pros and cons for each of these options. With Excel file, it's very easy to use Excel functions to modify it, and you can read it, and you can talk over it with someone else. But for computers, it's very hard to read it or export it, and it's really almost impossible. So, for example, if you have a preview picture inserted in the Excel file, it's almost impossible to get it out correctly, and so on. But for machines, there are structures like XML or JSON. These are common ways how to transfer the data. There actually are a couple of standards already, like VDI. I forget the number. It's 3608, I think, and or eTIM, for example, that they have their own structures standardized. So it's also a way how to share the data. And the usual way how to do it is to send it over to someone. I will be talking about APIs in the next chapter. So to just a second, to properly share the data, it's very important to understand what is database mapping. It's similar to where we talk about building smart data dictionary. So we made a very simple example there. It's here in the presentation. So in your database, as I said, it should be as much flexible as for you as needed. So for example, you name your property length, but in the database you want to share it to. It could be architects or planners internal standard. It could be another database or the eShop, as I said, website, whatever. There will be if you are manufacturing Windows, there will probably be parameter frame length. So we have to tell your exporter that your length is the frame length in the other database. So how it's usually done is that you take a unique identifier of your parameter or property, and you connect it to the unique identifier of the other of the same property in the other database. And therefore, if you send out the export, the second application can take it and understands what data you are sending, and can import it and work with it. So this is in detail again explained in the document, but I suppose we will add more examples and relations to the data dictionaries and how to handle this and so on. But this is the crucial part about sharing information. The database mapping is something that you just need to understand as a manufacturer, because otherwise you will share data who no one would understand. All right, we can go to the final one. This is the most technical one. It's about automation. So if you are able to get the data, export the data, then you want to automate it, obviously. So you won't have to take care or think about when to update the data. So in past, it has been done through RSS, for example, that you exposed part of the data so anybody could read it. But the most common one is Common Ways API, Application Programming Interface, which means that we explain it as a door to other application. So there are two ways, basically. You can create your own door. That means somebody can connect to you, or you can connect to someone. So basically, there are, again, pros and cons. If you provide your own API, it's a very complex topic. If you are not a software company, you don't want to probably do that, because you would have to create a specification of the API so somebody would understand and be able to connect. You would have to maintain it, secure it, and all the stuff around. So it's a possibility, and then you will have control about who's getting which data. But on the other hand, if you connect to other applications, you also have knowledge which data you are sharing where. The only thing you need to do is the database mapping, so you will send the correct set of properties in the correct standard or structure. It's much more safe because you are deciding, you are the initiator of the action, you are authorizing on the other side, and then you are sending data. Then you usually get the information if the data are correct, and if they are correct, that it has been uploaded and updated and so on. The beauty of this is that it's up to you to decide when to update the data. So it could be set up that every time you change a property or a product, it is sent automatically everywhere. It could be every week. It could be up to pressing a button. It's really up to you how to do this. So I think that's about it. And I wonder, because this session, should have been about discussion with other people or manufacturers or so. So we have a couple of people here and maybe someone online. So I would like to ask, for example, how much of these things did you know? How do you safe in this area as a manufacturer? If you need some more help would that be, and so on. No question online. So
one question. One question. I'm part of the electrical domain, and we are facing at the moment also a challenge. So, how do you define which level of purity, for example, you want to give? For example, if you want to send a file of your product to someone who is using that in his collaboration together, because for different phases in the process, you may want to have a different level of purity. Sometimes there is no different one; you always get the biggest. Is there a way to somehow define what should be in that file? How do you define it?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So the geometry data are basically a separate issue to deal with. There is no official standard for how the geometries of different product types should be described. There are common standards, like in the industries, how you, for example, describe it. So in a right clicker, if you have the I don't know the name. So probably if you have a product type, you will know what is thickness and what is depth, and you can distinguish, and you don't think about it. So for example, wall has thickness and it doesn't have depth, and that's it, and everybody knows that. As for the level of geometry or the detail, what we in our company do is that we explain to manufacturers that it is not needed to have the objects very detailed. So for example, we made our own standards and we told the manufacturers that they can use it, and we are helping them to fill in these necessary data. Then we found out, thanks to Radboud here, that in ATEM, they are creating something similar. It's called modeling classes. So they are describing every product type and saying which property is which. Because then if you give someone Excel file to fill in the information, they will know that parameter X is exactly this dimension. And I believe it's the only way how to do it, because I've seen many concepts saying, okay, let's do it automatically. If it's long enough, it will be length and not width and so on. But this is not 100% reliable. So the only way is basically describe everything. And it's funny thing that everybody's talking about product data templates and properties and working BIM. That's all fine, but this is the hard work that has to yet be done. And I think it will take experts from all the industries to put the knowledge together and to create these drawings. So I don't know if Radboud would like to comment, but yeah. So that's it.
I can say from the U.S. perspective, and this is really where the whole LOD specification from BIM4 came from, right? Which was trying to figure out the purpose of the geometric display. So early design, specifying all that, and so that you could give the designer the option to choose how detailed that might be. And of course, the minimum is this sort of bounding box, right? The thing that we struggled with for a long time, because manufacturers didn't have a standard, is we might get a model that had been generated using SolidWorks or something like that, and every rivet, every fastener, every crease was in the model. And that's what they were giving out to all of the designers and everything. Well, if it's a one-off object, not really a big impact. But if you have 3,000 instances of that object, then all of a sudden, you know, the designers are complaining about their BIMs being very slow and overburdened and large. So, you know, I'm not sure what the magic answer is, but I think sort of, you know, this idea of trying to think about, well, what's a good level of detail depending on what the purpose is might be a way to do it. Because, you know, essentially you could have, I mean, we've talked about this before in the earlier implementers forums, is there is a way in IFC where you could say, well, you could have multiple body representations of the same object, and then the user, if you had the right interface and the tools, would get to choose which one you got to use. And I think DDS-CAD has done an actual demonstration of that early on, several years ago. But we never really picked it up in terms of implementing it and having a standard implementation of that. Could be another way to explore that. You know, and just, you know, well, we know it's always hard to get, you know, multiple manufacturers from around the world to sort of come together and have those kind of discussions.
So since we have some time now, I would continue this conversation. So one thing is that we've been in contact with like a global manufacturer of doors, and he told us that they wanted to do BIM properly. So they agreed on some project that they will deliver LOD 500 objects to the architects. So they spent like, I don't know, 1 trillion hours of work on it. And it was super huge, of course. And they were setting the properties exactly with the IDs of the standards of the studio and so on. So in the end of the day, all of them found out that they really didn't need it. It's like we are telling manufacturers for years that what users request from them is usually something they are used to request. So if you are designing something and you need a chair, you say, oh, let's call this manufacturer and get some BIM objects. And they don't really think about what they get. Usually they have it for visualizations only, so they put something in the model and so on. But for the users who really need to deliver BIM models, and they care about the data, they will think completely different. So that's two different groups of the planners, so, who they are delivering. And as for the geometry, I'm also with Espen here, part of the Loin group. We are now working on part 2, that is the guidelines how to specify the requirements for the properties. And we've been discussing topics like, what if there is an object and you require only 2 dimensions, but in fact it's 3-dimensional? So should it be flat, or could it be there? And the Loin would tell you, don't care about the height because nobody requested it. So it has to be like that, because some things you just can't not put there, and it has to be there. And there is also explanation about what is a symbol, and that the symbol is actually like a 0D. It's 0D or 1D? 0D, 0-dimensional, because it's a point somewhere, and its size doesn't represent the size of the luminaire, for example. So these are all things that users are actually working with now, and they couldn't get used to it because Loin didn't exist a couple of years ago, and they are still downloading some stuff and putting it inside, and it would take a lot of practice to get into this workflow where you will be actually checking the data against the IDS, or the IDS is the format, but the contract. Yes, so there's still a lot of work to do.
Yeah, these are really good points. We had a discussion in our room. If it's possible, I mean, IDS starts now, it's in a very early phase. But if you say you have along the chain or life cycle of a project, you define different use cases with different people, different information. So this LOIM concept. And then you say, okay, if I have a use case, we kind of write an IDS for it, kind of a template or recipe, however you want to call it. And in there would also be information what the LOG would look like. But the question is something like that doable in a machine-readable format. Okay, you can describe it, but then it's a document, and you have a document maybe in this ideas.
Mm-hmm.
But is it also possible to put in information that you can, I mean, you would need to define what LOG 100, 200, and so on is, but you also put in, like, some specification. You say, I know how deep that detail
Okay,
is.
I think I know where you're going. So I'll try to explain. So how we do it is, first step is to get the documentation, so you know which property is which. So how do you create the BIM object then? So how we do it is based on that documentation. We create the object in Revit, and then we create it also in ArchiCAD, like the extra work natively there. And then we have our own 3D environment where we again create it from scratch. So we have several environments. In each of the environment, it's created from the scratch. So it has all the capabilities of the software, like stretching, parametric, material mapping, everything. But it has to be done all over again. So if you have, I don't know, 500 types of luminaires, you would have to do 500 types of like generic models. But this is again something that if somebody has the documentation, it actually takes so little time to create it, because most of the work is they're thinking about what should this be named like that, or should this be parametric or not, or what is the default value if the manufacturer doesn't provide, it should be 5 or 50 and so on. So when you have all this knowledge, then creating the object, it's very simple. So that's one way. I mean, we've been talking about IFC for products, and that it would be maybe possible to do it there, but it's just a concept that is evolving, and we have no idea when this will be possible to use. So but it's it should include topic like the solution like this for this. Yeah. Yeah, what we tell manufacturers is that if they start caring about the data, which is the purpose of this document and session, and then they start filling even the geometry data, then if somebody comes and says, hey, there is a different standard, but the depth is depth 2, then you just map it in the database and it's done. So you don't have to like do all the work again. It's just about adjusting some things. So it's really not a big deal, because if all your products are unified and done in the same way, and then you can basically do it in the Excel file we don't like, but you just switch it and you have it. So it's really about trying to start and knowing that some of this work will have to be done. And we've so far never managed to provide data structure to manufacturer who they will be able to fill in and send back correctly. There's always like, oh, we don't know that, or you do it, we don't have time, or or stuff like that. So it's very hard, even after all these years, when we thought that in 2023 manufacturers will be sending us everything automatically. It's not happening. So there was also the like impulse to start talking about it, because we thought that the product domain should be the place where manufacturers would ask if they had such questions. Yeah.
It's also the question if there is one size fits all that impression depending on the products that you know, projects. It's very different. We think that probably geometry is a little bit also overestimated because it's one representation of data, one possible representation. I think a lot of the value of data is the more semantic data. And quite often is that the geometry something, yes, if we want to have localization where it is in the building and perhaps somehow how it looks like. But most products or even materials are not that interested in geometry. And then you have a completely other discipline that's then if you sell a building where you have these 3D renderings and so on, we're interested in having very, very high detail, also in colors and texture, so that then accuracy is not that important. Therefore, I have the impression what you're looking for is a kind of the magic. So give me a standard or a solution that makes the magic. Always have the right geometry in the right situation. And quite often I would say you will not get the magic. So if you have a manufacturer that provides products that will be part of the structure of the building, then most probably geometry is quite important. But then even most probably I think it's the detail product that is very important. So how to mount a window, not the window itself. How to mount the door, not the door itself. And there, I'm not that sure if it's sometimes also kind of looking for a holy grail, create one solution that fits all use cases. That really, manufacturers have to think about it. Potentially also be in conversation with their customers. So with my kind of products, what is really used at the end of the day? If you're talking about electrical rooms, I think a lot of electrical equipment, geometry is not that important, it's the box around.
Yeah, that's true for some of the products, but some, like switch cabinets, which can be aligned in different configurations, have also parts inside, and also connected to maybe transformers outside of that. So it depends on the role. For the architect, maybe it's not so important. It just needs to know if there's a space on top of it. So, for example, the HVAC system can suck the heat or the hot air away, things like that. But for, let's say, in later process steps, even when it comes to operation, maintenance, then it's interesting to have a representation of this product that someone can identify when you're standing in front of it, for example, or if you line with someone who is helping you with maintenance, so that you're talking about the same product that you're seeing, something like that. So it's not only about planning, it's also later on during operation. And maybe sometimes it makes sense to have a more detailed model. But as you say, in the beginning of planning, if you have hundreds of sensors or whatever, and they have a high definition geometry, including maybe the logo of the company, which is also in.
Yeah, I've seen those.
Yeah, that's funny because then your system maybe breaks down just because.
Yeah, the question is, what if some BIM software could handle this level of detail? But the point is that I think that as we talk about open standards, the whole session here, the whole conference, it is crucial that there be also standard for the geometry. It doesn't matter if it's ITIM or buildingSMART, whoever does it, but it has to be there because it's the only way how to create the specification from generic specification to the real product specification, because there could be a long way. And if you want to start from scratch and say, okay, there is a sensor, you have no idea which one. You just know it will be there, and you just put your requirements there. And in some stage of the project, it may be enough because then it goes to tender, and it will be a year in the database before somebody gets into the topic of buying it or deciding which one it will be. So without these generic geometries, you would have like only the boxes everywhere. So it's a start, and then enhancing the generic geometry more and get more detail. It's about like including more work. So it's if you have the workflow and you know it works and how to do it, and then that it could be, I don't know, 50 types of sensors instead of 2. It's just the only amount of time that you put in, but eventually it could be done. So I really believe this is a start how to make BIM work, and it will evolve. And I think this is the possible way how to do it.
When I'm tracing these conversations, so what you said, it depends. And what you said, the BIM software has to be able to handle it. And what is not said, but is also important, you have to maintain this data. And that's my question a bit. Do we expect something from standardization to get rid of expertise? So even the example you mentioned, and I know design is an example, so that you have unexperienced workforces going into a technical room of a building with augmented reality and getting instructions how to fix something. I wouldn't like to have someone like this in my building. I would like to get an expert that is not doesn't have to rely on augmented reality and exact geometry to go to the right tube and fix something that you're liking, because it doesn't have any idea what he's doing.
Yeah, I get the point. Yeah, you're right. So if you say, okay, this is a very homogeneous environment, then you're completely right. But the problem is that, for example, if you go to the industrial part of the business, at some point, you exchange parts of this once complete solutions through other vendors. And there are so many vendors, and sometimes these parts fit well together, sometimes not. So you have to exchange something, maybe some part that's on the right side of the switch cabinet is now on the other. So you have to adjust. And then at some point, even an experienced person who was also who worked on that same solution maybe a few years ago, comes to the place and now complete new pain, and then even then it could help to have them. But only augmented reality and maintenance, digital twins, that's one point. But even in between, so for example, you have the panel builder, so that someone needs this product data to produce that individual customized product for the building, and also they need some more detailed data. So these are the two. Yeah.
Sure, and then you have value, and then you draw it.
Very easy.
Because as soon as you have value out of an exact geometry, you will draw it. And that's a little bit my question. So are we looking for this holy grail? And the other hand is, very often you are not dependent from detailed geometry, then leave it. And as soon as you get a value out of it, then draw it.
Well, yeah. So I think the other side of this too is to remember that when we talk about interoperability exchanges, at least from the IFC point of view, anything's possible, right? Any of these geometries are possible. And again, exploring this idea of, well, what if you could have multiple representations in there? I think in many other cases, when we talk about, well, how to solve this, so the BIM for Bridges and Structures project, we're dealing with a specific use case that's going from the designer to the contractor and fabricators. Now, there are some parts that are not, that in the traditional workflow of 2D drawings the bridge engineer is providing highly detailed drawings of, like the bearings, especially if they're sophisticated bearings, like a pot or disc bearing, parts. But the truth of the matter is that the bridge engineer is really just grabbing a standard detail from their library, and all they're really concerned with is the performance criteria and the size, because they hand that to the contractor and the fabricators, and the fabricator actually does the final determination and design and detailing. So what we've said is, for our use case, in our models, really the representation of the bearing is a bounding box almost that says, this is where the bearing is at, here is its maximum size. I've given you a drawing that gives you, and specifications that give you where it is. Now, then, when the fabricator's done, they're going to give back that detailed model that is actually going to represent what's done. So we're approaching it from the point of view is, well, we can set up standards, because this is also going to matter to all the bridge designers and and the owners and things in the United States, because they want to set a national standard. So then the recommendation is not just IFC based, but it's also this modeling workflow based, where we say, okay, we know that you're used to doing it this way, but now for the modeling workflow, we're just asking you to provide this much information, and that's enough. And we get everybody to agree to it. That's great, because they know that they're going to get more detailed information, more detailed geometry if they want it. And I think, from my point of view, from a software implementation point of view, it's a great way to tackle it, is to actually have these real world scenarios that make you really think about, okay, yes, I have these models, they're detailed in SolidWorks because I use them for manufacturing in-house. Should I simplify them for everybody else's use? Okay, and then, set up these ideas saying, no embossments, no embossment logos, or you have that 500 level that says, okay, all the logos, but maybe they're textures, they're not actual geometry logos. You don't have all the fasteners in there, but it's part of a texture or an image map, whatever that may be. And again, I think it helps, instead of in the abstract thinking about it, is thinking about it in those specific use cases, because then you could really solve it sort of on a case-by-case basis and maybe work from the simplest and say, look, we know everybody's going to provide at least a rough bounding box, or say rough geometry, but then you have to determine what's rough geometry, right? And then just work from there. Then when everybody agrees on that one, then you work on the next one, and then you work on the next one. Instead of trying to say, well, here's the entire expectation, here's the entire standard, here's the entire expectation for all workflows. I mean, to me, that's just sort of one way to sort of tackle the geometry thing. Because we said the data is all there. The question is how much of it do I push or how much do I pull? Depends on my point of view and what I'm doing with it.
Yeah, you're right. I think the idea also we discussed in our room was that if we would go such a way, just stick to maybe 3 detail levels: low, medium, high.
Yeah.
No 100 to 500, because you would have to define it for each product, because that's not possible. But just, as you say, bounding boxes that we say we use some transfer information, even if the product is not already there, just kind of a placeholder. With the information, you know exactly what this product has to do. The power node, everything is already in there, and then you can exchange it at any point with a product that fits that specification. Okay, then the bounding boxes are fine. But if you have then multi-vendor projects where you have to align a lot of, at the same stage maybe, or phase in the project, align with different suppliers, and then they deliver to different expectations, then it could get messy. Maybe it's also doable, because then you have to align. But it's still, if you don't need to align that much, maybe it would be a benefit. Maybe that's the idea a little bit behind it. But yeah, if you say, okay, just if we need it, then we produce that, model in a higher detail, of course, that's doable. We are just thinking to give a little more ease on this alignment processes to make it easier for everyone to work together in such a project. That was the idea behind it.
I have a question about, and this has come up in US discussions as well, is, of course, there's a wide variety of the capabilities of manufacturers to produce and publish and share this data, right? So traditionally we've had third parties like the suites, hardware product catalogs, and there's other RCAT and others, which basically go to a manufacturer and say, hey, we got you. We're gonna do your publishing for you, your brochures, your hardware specs, all of that stuff, we'll do that for you. And I think, they're also an interesting party to get involved because, then they also have this expertise of working with the marketplace and figuring out what is needed, what is possible, what their experience has been in the past of, how people are using this information. But it also seems like, there's a lot of talk and saying, hey, manufacturers, you have to do this. But then is it, well, I have to do it, or can I get somebody to help me to do this, right? And then bringing them into the picture and then saying, okay, can we get everybody on the same page too?
So what is the question, or was it only a comment?
Well, I mean, so, looking at, do you talk to like the BIM objects of the world and the, those type of companies and what has their experience been in the last 10 years since they've been operating?
Yeah, that's a very good topic also. I mean,
it's also data, not just
yeah.
For them, it's very much data too.
So we try to put a lot of insights in the document. So one of the inputs was that the manufacturer is the one responsible for the correctness of the data. So we had the discussions, who's responsible for the specification? Is it the architect? So what if he uses old BIM object that is not up to date anymore? So basically, if the manufacturer is trying to provide up-to-date data in a visible way, or you would be able to find it, then it would be maybe the planner's fault. But maybe if the planner is checking up the objects, he can find and download something that is old, but he downloads it the day, maybe it's the manufacturer's fault. So I don't think this has been decided, but we think that manufacturers shouldn't rely on these libraries that much, and that's also what we are explaining as cons with the BIM objects, that you never know where did you get it or who uploaded it and so on. So for example, a couple of years, it could be, I don't know, 10 years maybe back, we've been certified developers for SketchUp, and we tried to upload something to the SketchUp warehouse, or 3D warehouse as they called it, and it was a huge database of all the things you can imagine. And we said, okay, but how do this manufacturer knows is his object? Because if somebody says it's a Vitra chair and uploads it and it has the wrong dimensions, it won't fit there. So they were thinking about like making these like profiles of manufacturers and so on, but eventually it never happened. So it's not that easy. So that's why we are talking about the data and not the BIM objects, and we are saying that BIM object is some timestamp of the product data in time that you can find somewhere, but it's not something you should basically work with in the first place. Yeah, and there was also something I wanted to say. I will get back to it when I remember. Yeah.
Yes, listening to the conversation, hearing that there is a need of something, need of knowledge, need of I have my standardization hat on. I'm part of BIM standardization both in SEM and ISO, as well as in buildingSMART. The work that Petr has referred to in that's started in SEN, Scientific Opportunity, this level of information need. This could be in that group. So on a general basis, I think it is very good if more manufacturers can be part of that work, because that it is a VM agreement work, so it will be an ISO standard, which again I think should be closely aligned with the work in buildingSMART, so that buildingSMART doesn't start another overlapping topic of this. But in general, I think these are topics that should be discussed with I think more people than in the Royal Group for the moment, because manufacturers are, I would claim they're absent, because you think level of information need is for the designers only. Right. But what we're discussing here is an alignment between designers and manufacturers.
Yeah, from my experience, lots of manufacturers are really waiting to someone to tell them what to do. And it's a lot of them. And they say, just we don't want to invest any money before it's a standard or by government rules or something. So
we have the same issue with software vendors, right? Implementation.
I just want to finish off with the level of information need work. It comes in 3 parts. You mentioned part 2, which will explain when it's done. It will explain how to do this. It's how to set up documentation requirements. It's how to set up geometrical requirements and data, of course. Part 3 will be machine to machine, how to do it. It's an early start of that work. So lots of discussion left to be done. So yeah, calling out for I would say experts. It's my message, especially from manufacturers. There's also a lot of design discussions in that.
So I want, especially within the buildingSMART community, I want everyone to remember, like when we, for these projects, you know, the activity proposals and the detailed project plans, you'll note that there's a section in there that talks about other standards and liaisons with other bodies. So we've been trying really, really, really hard over the last 4 or 5 years to make sure that we don't do everything inside our own bubble, right? So yes, we're fortunate enough, you and there's other people that are involved in these other groups. And I think that's the opportunity with the activity proposals and project plans, is to sort of be able to circulate it amongst those groups too and say, hey, we want to be a part of your work, or we want you to be a part of our work, so that we're not working in cross purposes. And so I think there's a great opportunity there. And then some of the projects that have been proposed already is, yeah, they've got maybe 3 or 4 manufacturers, but like they're the big ones, right? And if you convince them, you're kind of have that situation where some of the manufacturers are like, well, just tell me what to do. Well, if their 3 biggest competitors just decided on what to do, they're either going to be like, oh, okay, or they may decide they want to be a part of that conversation. So, yeah, I mean, I think there's that opportunity to make sure you don't have 3 different directions going on, buildingSMART, SEN, and ISO, but it just takes that effort where we try to circulate that information, these proposals, and say, hey, here's an opportunity. Let's work on it together, and then hopefully find more money to help move these projects along.
Yeah, I think there's lots of topics that are connected very tightly, but it's so complex that each of the topics has to be discussed separately. So I think it makes sense that we trying to coordinate, and maybe it's overlapping sometimes, but it's necessary to get it to work. So it's like construction industry is very different from all the others. So it has to be complex.
And I will say in the US, we've been trying to do this for such a long time. Most of my work was on the building side of things. Now I'm working on the the infrastructure side of things, and it seems less complicated because it seems like the challenges are fewer because the complexity is lower to a certain degree. You know, you look at a road or a bridge or, you know, and they could be very large. They could be larger than a building, and they could be much smaller than a building. But the level of complexity is obviously magnitudes less than a building because I'm basically just doing the structure. And so there's other opportunities to look at those other industries too and say, or, you know, those other building sectors and say, well, could we solve it at this level, and then those lessons learned then take it to the building industry, you know, the verticals, as they say. I don't know. It's just things to consider in the approaches. You know, look at like rail, they have communications and traffic signaling, and, you know, all of these different parts that are different in a building, but they're similar. Okay, how do they want to handle it?
Yeah, I think that the digital age, let's say, will change a lot of things, and that's what we are trying to achieve on the roadmap, that to really see the whole life cycle, how it should work, and it will take some time before we find all the connections between the stages and everything, for example, the logistics and stuff like that. And I think it's a huge opportunity also for the manufacturers, not to only like do what they are asked to do by the planners who really want to do 3D and ask for BIM objects because they know what it is, or at least they think they know what it is, but they could think what the digital world can bring them. So, for example, my opinion is that providing BIM objects or the data is, we can say it's necessary, it will be necessary, but on the other hand, you can get a lot of insight from it. So if you don't rely only on BIM object downloads from a website, but you will ask people, what do you do with it? And you have tools that can analyze what the users are doing actually, or let them share the work with you and consult it with you in a digital way, then you can do a lot. And that's one thing. And we are always also thinking about the selling process, that there is lots of distributions where some manufacturers, they don't sell anything directly, they have distributors. But couldn't it be because historically it was too difficult to do it directly? Wouldn't it be possible to sell also directly through their e-shop, or like do it differently? Because there are manufacturers, or I don't know, concrete prefabs, or I don't know, bricks, basically bricks that you don't like put it on a truck and drive it to the distributor. You just drive it directly to the site. So why would you need someone else to make the transactions? So these are things that sometimes are not visible, but I think it will change things, and maybe there won't be any distributors in the end, and we will call it sometimes somehow different. But now it's a start, so it's a long way to go. So, and it all starts with the data and handling it somehow. Yeah. All right. So
we do have 20 minutes left, but
still no questions online? No?
yeah, no questions from online, but we can end early. That's no problem. Yeah, I'm monitoring the questions.
So do we have any? I think that there are some contacts in the presentation and in the document. So anyone who,
We're going to switch over to the
yeah.
PDF.
So anyone who just wants to reach to us, you can do that via email later. If it's recorded, I suppose some people will play it. Yeah, Michelle, by the way, I put your name there because you're the chairman. So yeah, so I just repeat, it's the first draft, so first version of the document. So I hope it will be evolving and being useful for all the manufacturers. And
So here's the PDF
yeah.
of that white paper so far, and
Yeah.
we can, yeah, there's Petr and Michelle's.
Yeah. All right. So that's it. So thank you for your time, and thanks for the inputs.
Thank you very much.
Perfect.
That concludes
Thank
our
you
session.
too. Thank you, Jeff.